My mother means well, you know? About the baby thing. Victoria's jaw tightened. Does she? She just wants what's best for us. He finally glanced over. Would it kill you to be more engaged? You barely said 10 words all evening. I spoke when spoken to. That's not what I mean. You just... He waved his hand vaguely. You fade into the background. It's like you're not even there sometimes. Good, she thought. That's exactly what I need you to think. At home. David disappeared into his study. Victoria headed to the spare bedroom she'd converted. Into her private office, the one room. David never entered because she'd told him it was. Her craft space and filled the visible. Areas with half-finished knitting projects and scrapbooking supplies behind the crafts. Hidden in a locked cabinet disguised as a storage chest sat her real work, her laptop, encrypted drives, files containing contracts worth millions, spreadsheets tracking her company's explosive growth. She logged into her secure server. 237 new emails since this afternoon. She scanned them quickly. Acquisition offers, partnership proposals, investor inquiries. Hayes Analytics had become exactly what she dreamed, a powerhouse in data analytics and business intelligence, quietly outperforming companies 10 times its age. Her CFO, Marcus Liu, had sent the final numbers for the quarter. Revenue up 42%. Profit margins exceeding projections. 3 major contracts signed in the past month alone. Victoria allowed herself a small smile. While Patricia Ross questioned her purpose, she'd been building something her father would have been proud of. A knock on the door made her jump. She quickly closed the laptop. Victoria? David's voice. You in there? Just finishing something? Be out in a minute. Whatever. I'm going to bed. His footsteps retreated. Victoria waited, listening to the sounds of the house settling. Water running. Doors closing. Silence. She reopened the laptop and pulled up the financial account she'd established 6 months ago. A separate fund she'd been quietly filling. Insurance, she called it. Enough money to disappear if she ever needed to. Enough money to start over anywhere in the world. Currently, it held $7.3 million. Not that she planned to run. No, Victoria had spent too long building Hayes Analytics to abandon it now. But she believed in backup plans. Multiple backup plans. Her phone buzzed with a message from Rebecca. Dinner next week? Need to discuss something important. Victoria frowned. Rebecca rarely used that tone unless something was wrong. What's up? She typed back. The response came immediately, not over text. In person. It's about David. Victoria's heart dropped. She stared at those 4 words, her mind racing through possibilities. Had he found out about the company? Had someone told him? Was he planning something? Thursday at 7? Rebecca sent. That Italian place you like. I'll be there. Victoria closed the laptop and sat in the darkness for a long moment. 6 years. She'd kept this secret for 6 years, building her empire in the shadows while playing the role of dutiful wife. Part of her had always known this moment would come, the moment when both worlds would collide. She just hadn't expected it to feel like standing on the edge of a cliff. Wind pushing at her back. Upstairs, David's phone chimed. She heard him answer, his voice low and warm, the voice he used to use with her. Hey, he said. Yeah, she's downstairs. We can talk. Victoria's stomach twisted. She knew that tone. Knew what it meant. She stood slowly, moving to the door, pressing her ear against it. I know, David was saying. It's complicated. But I'm working on it. Give me a few more months, okay? I promise. A pause. You know I love you, he continued. This isn't easy for me either. But we have to be smart about it. She doesn't suspect anything. Victoria's hand went to her mouth. Not in shock she'd suspected for weeks, but in a strange, sad confirmation. The marriage she'd been maintaining out of habit and hope was already over. David had just never bothered to tell her. She backed away from the door, her mind cataloging facts. Jessica from the office. Hotel receipts. Late nights. The way he'd stopped touching her months ago. The way he looked at his phone and smiled that secret smile. And now, his promise to someone else. Give me a few more months. What was he planning? Divorce? Was he waiting for some financial reason? Did he think there was money to take from her? Victoria almost laughed. If David tried to claim half of her assets, he'd get the surprise of his life. Every dollar she'd earned from Hayes Analytics was protected. Her lawyers had made certain of that, but the betrayal still stung. Not because she still loved him. That feeling had died slowly, suffocated under years of dismissal and disrespect. But because she'd wasted 6 years of her life, pretending this marriage was worth saving, she returned to her laptop and opened a new document. Began typing notes, names, dates, evidence she'd been collecting without quite admitting why David wanted a war. She'd give him one, but first, she needed to know what Rebecca had discovered. Thursday arrived wrapped in tension. Victoria told David she was meeting a friend for dinner, which was technically true, and drove across town to the Italian restaurant tucked into a quiet corner where no one they knew would see them. Rebecca was already waiting, her lawyer's face carefully neutral, but her eyes told a different story. Thank you for meeting me, Rebecca said as Victoria sat down. I've been debating whether to tell you this. Tell me what. Rebecca pulled out a folder. I was reviewing some documents for another client when I came across something concerning. A friend of mine works at Davidson and Associates, the firm David uses for his personal legal matters. Victoria's pulse quickened. And he filed papers 3 weeks ago. Preliminary divorce proceedings. The words hung in the air like smoke. Victoria had expected this, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a door slamming shut. He hasn't said anything to me, she said quietly. He's not supposed to. Not yet. He's building a case first. Rebecca slid the folder across the table. Victoria, he's claiming you're financially dependent on him, that you contribute nothing to the household, that you've been living off his income for years. Victoria's hands tightened on the folder. That's a lie. I know it's a lie. You know, it's a lie. But unless you're prepared to prove otherwise, a court might believe him. Rebecca leaned forward. He's also hired a private investigator. To follow me? To find assets he can claim. He thinks you're hiding money. Victoria almost smiled. David's instincts were actually correct. She was hiding money. Just far more than he could possibly imagine. There's more, Rebecca continued. He's been in contact with his family's lawyer. They're structuring it so that if you contest the divorce, they'll claim you manipulated David into marriage for financial security. They'll paint you as a gold digger who trapped their son. I make more than David does. From Hayes Analytics, which he doesn't know about. Rebecca's voice softened. Victoria, it's time. You can't keep the company secret anymore. If this goes to court, everything will come out anyway. Better to control the narrative now. Victoria stared at the folder, mind racing. She'd always known this day would come. She'd planned for it. But actually pulling the trigger, actually revealing the truth, felt like stepping off solid ground into empty air. There's something else, Rebecca said gently. The woman he's seen? Jessica Tram from his office? She's pregnant. The restaurant seemed to tilt. Victoria gripped the edge of the table. How far along? 3 months. She told HR last week. Filed for maternity leave. 3 months. While Victoria had been serving dinner at his parents' house, smiling through insults, playing her role, David had been creating a whole new life behind her back. What do I do? Victoria's voice came out barely above a whisper. Rebecca reached across the table, squeezing her hand. You do what you've been preparing to do for years. You stop hiding. You stop protecting him. You show everyone exactly who you are. His family will destroy me. She looked down at his hand, then up at his face. Let go. Something in her voice cold, final. Absolute made him release her immediately. Victoria walked out of the Ross house for the last time, leaving behind a family frozen in shock and a husband realizing he'd never known his wife at all. The night air hit her face like baptism. She stood on the front step for a moment, breathing in freedom. Her phone rang. Rebecca, I'm assuming it went badly? Rebecca's voice was warm with concern. Actually, Victoria said, a smile breaking across her face, it went perfectly. She got in her car and drove away, the Ross house shrinking in her rearview mirror until it disappeared completely. Behind her, David stood in the doorway, watching her taillights fade. He'd spent 6 years thinking he was superior, thinking he was in control. He'd just learned what it cost to underestimate a woman who'd been quietly preparing for war. The Forbes article dropped at 6 a.m. on Tuesday, and by 7, Victoria's phone was exploding. Her CFO were trending on LinkedIn. Media requests coming in. Her board chair. Congratulations. The phone hasn't stopped ringing. Rebecca, David's lawyer just called. He wants to talk settlement. Victoria sat in her real office, not the craft room at home, but her corner suite at Hayes Analytics headquarters, and watched her carefully constructed anonymity burn away. The article was everywhere. Business news sites, social media, industry publications. Her face, her story, her success. From shadows to spotlight. How Victoria Hayes built a $150 million empire. While everyone underestimated her, the article told it all. Her father's lessons. Her secret midnight work sessions. The company she built while playing the role of decorative wife. The reporter had captured something Victoria hadn't quite articulated until she saw it in print. She'd succeeded not despite being dismissed, but because of it. Invisibility had been her greatest asset. Until now. Her assistant knocked softly. Ms. Hayes? There are reporters downstairs. Security is keeping them back, but let them wait. Victoria's voice was calm. Schedule a press conference for 2 p.m. I'll make one statement, answer questions, then return to work. This company didn't build itself. Yes, ma'am. The assistant paused. If I may say, I've been working here 3 years. I never knew you were married. Victoria smiled slightly. That was intentional. After the assistant left, Victoria allowed herself a moment of stillness. She'd known this would be chaotic, but she hadn't quite anticipated the weight of it, the sudden transformation from invisible wife to public figure. Her phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen. She considered not answering. Let him stew in his own shock. But curiosity won. Victoria. His voice was rough, like he hadn't slept. We need to talk. No, we don't. The article, everything in there, is it true? Every word. A long silence. Then, why didn't you tell me? Victoria almost laughed. Would you have listened? Would you have believed me? Or would you have done exactly what you did? Tried to control it, diminish it, make it smaller so you could stay larger? I never. Yes, you did. Every time I tried to talk about business, you dismissed it as a hobby. Every time I mentioned an idea, you explained why it wouldn't work. Every time your family insulted me, you stayed silent. Victoria's voice remained steady. I didn't hide this from you out of spite, David. I hid it out of survival. I'm your husband. You filed for divorce 3 weeks ago. You don't get to play the wounded spouse now. Another silence. She could almost hear him thinking, recalculating, trying to find an angle. The house, he said finally. The investments. You said they were yours? Yes. How is that possible? We bought them together. No, I bought them. You signed the papers I put in front of you without reading them carefully. The house is in a trust under my maiden name. The investment accounts are under my control. The only thing that was ever truly joint was the checking account, which I funded while you thought you were the provider. That's fraud. It's actually excellent legal planning. Ask your lawyer. Better yet, ask mine. Rebecca will be happy to explain why you have no claim to any of it. She heard him breathing, harsh and ragged. Jessica? Victoria asked quietly. Is she keeping the baby? The silence confirmed it. David, I'm not angry. Not anymore. Victoria looked out her office window at the city below. I'm actually grateful. You showed me exactly who you were, and I prepared accordingly. If you'd been a better husband, I might have stayed. I might have kept hiding. You freed me by being exactly yourself. Victoria, we're done here. Your lawyer will receive my terms by end of day. They're more than fair. You'll get what you actually contributed, which isn't much. Sign the papers quietly, and we can both move on with our lives. And if I fight this, then the whole world learns about Jessica, about the baby, about how you planned to divorce me while claiming I was dependent on you, about every lie you told. Victoria's voice turned cold. I have evidence of everything, David. I've been documenting for months. So here's my kindness. I'm offering you a quiet exit. Take it. She hung up before he could respond. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear from the release of 6 years of silence. Rebecca texted, You okay? Victoria typed back, Better than okay. I'm free. The press conference that afternoon was controlled chaos. Victoria walked to the podium in her conference room, faced 24 cameras and reporters, and delivered a statement she'd written that morning. I built Hayes Analytics because I believed in creating value through data and intelligence. I built it quietly because I needed to prove first to myself, then to others, that I could succeed on my own terms. My personal life will remain personal, but my professional accomplishments are public record. I'm proud of what my team has achieved, and I'm excited about our future. Questions came rapid fire. Why did you keep it secret from your husband? Personal decisions remain personal. Are you getting divorced? That's between me and my lawyers. Your husband's family claims they had no idea. People often miss what they're not looking for. Victoria's voice was level. When you assume someone is small, you stop seeing their actual size. Do you have a message for other women hiding their success? Victoria paused. This was the question she'd been waiting for. Don't hide, she said firmly. Don't make yourself smaller to make others comfortable. Don't apologize for your ambition. And don't ever let anyone convince you that their comfort is more important than your truth. The room erupted with follow-up questions, but Victoria simply smiled, thanked them, and walked back to her office. Behind closed doors, she pulled out her phone and looked at a photo she'd kept hidden for years. Her father in his repair shop, grease-stained and proud, holding up a wrench like a trophy. I did it, Dad, she thought. Just like you taught me. Her phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number. She opened it carefully, prepared for hate or threats or David's family lashing out. Instead, it was from Amanda Thomas's wife. I've been watching you for years, the message read. I always knew you were stronger than they treated you. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like. I'm filing for divorce next week. Victoria stared at the message, something warm unfurling in her chest. She wasn't just freeing herself. She was showing others they could be free too. 3 weeks after the Forbes article, Victoria stood in family court, watching David's lawyer shuffle papers with increasing desperation. The judge had already reviewed the financial documents, the trusts, the separate accounts. The meticulous paper trail proving every asset Victoria claimed was legitimately, legally hers. David sat beside his attorney, looking smaller than she'd ever seen him. The swagger was gone, the confidence erased. He'd come to court expecting to claim half of everything. Instead, he was learning he'd never owned anything at all. "Your Honor," his lawyer tried one last time, "my client was unaware of these arrangements." Surely there's some claim to be made for what? Judge Morrison, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, looked over her glasses. For being willfully ignorant about his own household finances? For signing documents without reading them? For assuming his wife was incapable of independent success? "Your Honor, I've reviewed everything. Mrs. Hayes Ross built her company before the marriage. She maintained complete separation of assets. She can prove every dollar she contributed to joint expenses. Her husband, meanwhile, filed for divorce, claiming she was financially dependent while simultaneously conducting an affair that resulted in a pregnancy." Judge Morrison's tone was ice. "I'm not inclined to reward that behavior." David's face flushed red. "The divorce is granted," the judge continued. "Asset division follows the documentation provided. Mr. Ross will receive what he contributed to the marriage, which amounts to his personal possessions and half the joint checking account currently containing approximately $3,000. $3,000? David's voice cracked. "That's insane. The house alone is worth. The house is not yours and never was. Did you read the trust documents when you signed them 6 years ago?" "I know. I trusted. You trusted your wife to handle finances while dismissing her as incompetent. That was your choice, Mr. Ross. You don't get the benefit from it now." Victoria sat beside Rebecca, feeling nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. Just a profound sense of ending. "No," Rebecca's eyes blazed. "His family will be too busy picking up the pieces of their own shattered assumptions. Victoria, you built a 1-100-and-50-million dollar company while they belittled you. You employ hundreds of people. You're about to be featured in Forbes. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Then, why does it feel like I'm about to lose everything? Because you're about to lose the life you've been living. But that life was a cage, Victoria. This is freedom." They sat in silence for a long moment. Around them, other diners laughed and talked, oblivious to the world shifting at this corner table. Finally, Victoria opened the folder. Inside were David's divorce filings, each page a calculated insult. Respondent contributes minimal financial support. Respondent has no independent income. Respondent's lifestyle maintained entirely by petitioner's earnings. Lies, all lies, that they would have worked if she'd remained silent. Victoria pulled out her phone and opened her email. Found the message from Forbes. The interview was scheduled for next Tuesday. The article would publish 2 weeks after that. She typed a response. "Change of plans. I want to move the publication up. Can we do next week?" The reply came within minutes. "That's aggressive. May I ask why?" Victoria's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then she typed, "Because it's time for the truth to come out." She hit send. Rebecca was watching her carefully. "What did you just do?" "I moved up the Forbes article. It'll publish next week instead of next month." "Victoria, no more hiding." Victoria's voice was steady now, the decision made. "No more playing small. If David wants a divorce, he'll get one. But he'll get it from the real me, not the version he thinks he married. His family is going to lose their minds." "Good." Victoria closed the folder. Let them. They finished dinner discussing strategy, how to protect their assets, how to handle the media attention, how to prepare for David's inevitable fury when he discovered the truth. But beneath the legal talk and careful planning, Victoria felt something else, stirring something she hadn't felt in years. Power, not the kind that comes from money or success, though she had both. The kind that comes from finally, stopping apologizing for your own existence. She drove home through dark streets, hands steady on the wheel. David's car was in the driveway. Lights on upstairs. He was probably on the phone with Jessica, planning their future while his current wife parked the car. Victoria sat in the darkness for a moment, gathering herself. Then she walked inside to begin the final act of a marriage that had died years ago. She just hadn't signed the death certificate yet. Sunday arrived with the weight of tradition. Another monthly dinner at the Ross house. Victoria dressed carefully, a simple navy dress, pearl earrings, her armor of invisibility. But this time, she packed something extra in her purse. A tablet containing the advance copy of the Forbes article, scheduled to go live in 48 hours. She wasn't planning to use it. Not yet. But having it felt like carrying a match while standing in a room full of dynamite. David barely spoke during the drive. He'd been distant all week, probably strategizing with his lawyers, planning his exit. He had no idea his carefully constructed case was about to collapse. Patricia greeted them at the door with her usual performance. David and Victoria. The same temperature drop. The same dismissive smile. The dining room was already full. Thomas and Amanda. Claire and her fiancé, Robert, at the head of the table. Victoria took her usual seat, the invisible corner where she could observe without being noticed. Dinner began with its predictable rhythm. David held court, sharing stories from work while his family hung on every word. Patricia served the roast, making a pointed comment about how a woman's cooking shows her love for her family. Victoria ate in silence, watching David's performance. He was good at this, the charming son, the successful businessman, the man everyone admired. No one here knew about Jessica, about the baby, about the divorce papers filed in secret. Victoria, Patricia said suddenly, "Did you make anything for tonight?" "I brought a salad." "It's in the kitchen." "Oh." Patricia's nose wrinkled. "Well, we have plenty of food already." Translation: Your contribution isn't needed. Victoria took a sip of water, her hand steady. "Actually," David said, leaning back in his chair, "I've been thinking about what you said, Mother. About family. About priorities." Patricia brightened. "Oh?" "Victoria and I have been discussing our future." He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Making some important decisions." Victoria's heart began to pound. Was he really going to do this here? Now? In front of his entire family? That's wonderful. Patricia clapped her hands. "Does this mean we're reassessing?" David interrupted. "Looking at what's best for both of us." The table fell silent. Everyone stared at David, then at Victoria, sensing something beneath his careful words. "What David means," Victoria said quietly, surprised by her own voice, "is that we're getting a divorce?" The explosion was immediate. Patricia gasped. Robert's fork clattered to his plate. Claire's eyes went wide. "Victoria." David's face reddened. "That's not. We haven't. You filed papers 3 weeks ago." Victoria's voice remained calm. "Claiming I was financially dependent on you. Claiming I contributed nothing to our marriage." He went through my private documents. "I didn't have to." "You were careless." She turned to Patricia. "Your son has been seeing a woman from his office. She's pregnant. That's why he's divorcing me." The silence that followed was absolute. That's ridiculous," David stammered. "She's lying. She's trying to make me look bad because what?" Victoria stood slowly. "Because I'm tired of being treated like I don't exist? Because I'm done playing small so you can feel big?" "Victoria," Robert's voice was hard, "I think you should calm down." "No." The word came out stronger than she intended. "I'm done being calm. I'm done being quiet. I'm done pretending I'm less than I am so none of you feel threatened." "What are you talking about?" Patricia's voice rose. "You're being hysterical. I'm being honest. Victoria pulled out her tablet. Something I should have done years ago. David's eyes locked on the device. What is that? The truth. Victoria unlocked the screen, pulled up the Forbes article. This is publishing in 2 days. I wanted you all to hear it from me first. She began reading aloud, her voice steady. Victoria Hayes-Ross, founder and CEO of Hayes Analytics, has built one of the fastest-growing companies in the data intelligence sector. With a current valuation of $150 million and nearly 300 employees across 5 states, Hayes has achieved what many entrepreneurs only dream of. What? David snatched the tablet from her hands. His face went white as he scrolled through the article. Photos of Victoria at her company headquarters. Graphs showing Hayes Analytics' explosive growth. Quotes from industry leaders calling her a visionary. This can't be real, he whispered. It's very real. Victoria's voice didn't waver. I built my company before we married. I kept it separate from you because I always knew that you couldn't handle a wife who was more successful than you. You lied to me. David's voice cracked. All these years you lied. I protected myself. There's a difference. Patricia found her voice. This is absurd. You're claiming to run a company while keeping house? I've been doing both. While you questioned my worth. While you implied I was useless. While your son planned to divorce me and claim I've been living off him. Victoria's gaze swept the table. Every penny he thinks he earned. I could have taken it all. The house is in a trust under my name. His car? I bought it. The investments he brags about? Those were my strategies. Thomas spoke for the first time. Why didn't you ever say anything? Would you have believed me? Victoria looked at him. Be honest. If I told you 5 years ago that I was building a multi-million-dollar company, would any of you have taken me seriously? The silence was her answer. David was still staring at the tablet, his hands shaking. The divorce will proceed exactly as I determine, Victoria finished. With lawyers far better than yours. You'll get nothing from me, David, because there was never anything of mine that was yours to take. She gathered her purse, her movements deliberate. Where are you going? Patricia demanded. Away from here. Victoria headed for the door. I have a board meeting in the morning. A company to run. A life I've been building while you all dismissed me. Victoria, wait. David grabbed her arm. The sound of rain drummed against the kitchen window as Victoria Hayes wiped down the marble countertop for the 3rd time that evening. Her hands moved with practiced precision, erasing every fingerprint, every smudge evidence that someone had lived here, breathed here, existed here. She paused, staring at her reflection in the polished surface. 34 years old. Soft brown eyes that had learned to hide storms. A smile that had become a mask. Upstairs, footsteps thundered across the ceiling. Her husband, David Ross, 41, was pacing again. That restless energy meant one thing. He was frustrated. And when David was frustrated, the whole house paid the price. Victoria's stomach tightened as she heard him descend the stairs, each step deliberate and heavy. Victoria! His voice cut through the quiet. Where's my blue shirt? The one I need for the presentation? She dried her hands carefully. It's hanging in your closet, left side. I already looked there. I'll check again. He appeared in the doorway, jaw set, eyes hard. Once, those eyes had softened when they looked at her. Once, he had called her brilliant when she showed him her business plans during their first year of marriage. But that was before he decided her ambitions were threatening. Before he convinced her to take a step back and support the family while he climbed his corporate ladder. What David didn't know, what no one in his family knew, was that Victoria had never stopped climbing. She had simply learned to climb in silence. 5 years ago, while David attended late-night meetings and weekend golf tournaments, Victoria had registered a company under her maiden name, Hayes Analytics. She started small, consulting projects completed in the hours before dawn, contracts signed while David slept. Investors met in coffee shops across town while he assumed she was grocery shopping. Her father had taught her the fundamentals of business before he passed. "Knowledge is armor," he used to say, tapping his temple. "They can take everything else, but they can't take what you know." Victoria had built that armor piece by piece. Now, Hayes Analytics employed 273 people. The company's valuation had just crossed $150 million. Her personal wealth was protected by trusts, offshore accounts, and legal structures so carefully designed that even forensic accountants would need months to trace them. And David? He had no idea. To him, she was simply the wife who kept his house clean, his meals warm, his mother happy. "Found it," he called from upstairs. No apology. No thank you. Victoria returned to the kitchen and pulled out her phone. 3 messages from her CFO about tomorrow's board meeting. 2 from her lawyer, Rebecca Chun, confirming the documents were ready. 1 from her business partner congratulating her on closing the Peterson acquisition. She typed quick responses, deleted them, then slipped the phone into her pocket as David's footsteps approached again. Tonight was the monthly dinner at his parents' house. The command performance where she played her role. Dutiful daughter-in-law, silent supporter, invisible woman. David's mother, Patricia Ross, 67, had perfected the art of backhanded compliments. His father, Robert, 70, barely acknowledged her existence. "We're leaving in 20 minutes, David announced. "Don't be late." Victoria nodded, watching him disappear into his study. Through the doorway, she glimpsed him checking his phone, a small smile playing at his lips. That smile never appeared when he looked at her anymore. She knew about the messages. About Jessica from his office. About the hotel receipts buried in his credit card statements. She still had access to because she'd been managing their finances for years. David thought he was clever. He thought she was oblivious. He had no idea the ground beneath. His feet was already crumbling. The Ross family home sat on a manicured lawn in the wealthiest part of town, all white columns in judgment. Victoria carried the dish she'd prepared roasted, vegetables with herbs from her own garden, while David walked 3 steps ahead. Already absorbed in his phone, Patricia opened the door with her practiced smile. "David, darling." And Victoria. The temperature dropped 5 degrees between those names. "Hello, Patricia." Victoria kept her voice warm, steady. "You brought vegetables again?" Patricia's nose wrinkled slightly. "Well, I suppose it's healthy. Come in. Everyone's waiting." The dining room buzzed with conversation. David's brother, Thomas, sat with his wife, Amanda. His sister, Claire, had brought her new fiancé. The long mahogany table gleamed under the chandelier. Every plate precisely positioned. Victoria took her usual seat, far from the head of the table, tucked between Thomas and the wall. David settled beside his father, already launching into a story about his latest work triumph. "So I told the client," David said, gesturing expansively. "Either we do this my way, or you find someone else." And guess what? They backed down. Signed the contract that afternoon. "That's my son." Robert clapped David's shoulder. "That's how you command respect." Patricia beamed. David has always known how to handle people. Such natural leadership. Victoria served herself small portions, watching the performance. She'd seen this show for 6 years. David, the golden son. Thomas, the reliable backup. Claire, the princess. And Victoria, the accessory who'd better not outshine anyone. "Victoria," Patricia said suddenly, "be a dear and check on the roast, would you? I think it might need basting." Victoria stood without protest. In the kitchen, she found the roast perfectly fine, but she basted it anyway. Through the doorway, She heard them continue talking as if she'd vanished. When she returned, David was telling another story. This one about his investment strategy that had saved them during last year's market dip. Victoria's fingers tightened around her fork. That strategy had been hers. She'd spent 3 weeks analyzing trends, consulting with her own financial advisors at Hayes Analytics. Then, carefully suggested the moves to David as if they'd just occurred to her. He'd taken credit, of course. He always did. "I don't know what I'd do without Victoria," David said, and the table politely chuckled. "She keeps the home fires burning while I'm out conquering the business world." "That's what a good wife does," Patricia added. "Supports her husband's success." Amanda glanced at Victoria with something like sympathy, but said nothing. No one ever said anything. Dinner progressed through its usual rhythm. Questions directed at David, compliments for Thomas's promotion, excitement over Claire's engagement. Victoria spoke when spoken to, smiled when expected, disappeared into the background like expensive wallpaper. Then Patricia turned to her. "Victoria, dear, when are you and David going to give us grandchildren? You're not getting any younger." The question landed like a punch. Victoria's hand stilled on her water glass. "We're not ready yet," she said carefully. "Not ready?" Patricia's eyebrows rose. "You've been married 6 years. What are you waiting for?" David shifted uncomfortably. This was dangerous territory, the one subject where he couldn't play hero because Victoria had been clear from the beginning. She wanted to wait. She wanted to build something first. Her company. Her security. Her escape route, though she hadn't named it that yet. "Mother," David said lightly, "we've talked about this." "I just think it's selfish," Patricia continued, ignoring him. "A woman's primary purpose is motherhood. What else are you doing with your time?" The room fell silent. Everyone waited for Victoria's response. Building a $150 million empire, she thought. Managing a company that employs nearly 300 people. Preparing to expand into international markets. "I volunteer," she said quietly. "At the women's shelter downtown." "Oh, that's nice." Patricia waved dismissively. "But volunteering doesn't compare to raising children. David deserves a real family." Something cold settled in Victoria's chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just a crystalline clarity that had been forming for months. Sharpening with each dismissal, each insult, each moment of invisibility. "I should start bringing out dessert," Victoria said, standing Dot in the kitchen. She gripped the counter, breathing slowly. Her phone buzzed. "Rebecca, board meeting confirmed for 9 a.m. Photographer wants to do the profile shoot for Forbes next week. You good?" Forbes. They wanted to feature her as one of their top entrepreneurs under 40. The article would include her photo, her company's name, her net worth. David would see it. His family would see it. The whole world would see who she really was. Victoria typed back, "Schedule it." When she returned with the dessert, a cause tart she'd made that morning, David was in the middle of another story. She placed it on the table, and he barely glanced up. "Just set it down," he muttered. "I'm talking." She set it down, carefully, precisely. Her hands didn't shake anymore. The drive home was silent. David stared at his phone, thumbs moving rapidly across the screen. Victoria watched streetlights flash past, each one marking another mile between who they thought she was and who she actually was. "You were quiet tonight," David said without looking up. "I was listening." He'd learned too late that the woman he'd dismissed was the architect of her own empire, that the wife he'd underestimated had been 3 steps ahead of him for years, that his comfort had been built on her generosity, not his superiority. Victoria reached her apartment, her real home now, not the house she'd purchased in secret, and looked at herself in the mirror. She saw someone her father would have been proud of. Someone who'd endured, strategized, prepared, and ultimately freed herself. The scar from David's slap had faded completely. The bruises from years of dismissal had healed. What remained was strength, and a simple truth that Victoria would carry forever. When someone treats you as if you're nothing, the greatest revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's proving to yourself that you were always everything, with or without their recognition. Victoria Hayes had built her empire in shadows. Now she lived in full sunlight, and she was just getting started. I hope this story resonated with you. If it did, please like, share, and comment below with the lessons that spoke to you most. Let me know where you're watching from. I read every comment. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next story. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. David pushed past them without comment, getting into a car where Jessica sat in the passenger seat, visibly pregnant. Victoria paused on the steps, Rebecca at her side. "How do you feel?" a reporter called out. "Relieved," Victoria answered honestly. "Ready to move forward. Any regrets?" She considered this carefully. "I regret staying silent as long as I did. But I don't regret protecting myself. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Will you ever remarry?" Victoria smiled slightly. "Right now, I'm married to my work." "That's enough." Rebecca drove her back to the office, where Victoria's team had hung a banner. "Congratulations on your freedom." Our CFO met her with champagne and reports. "The publicity has been incredible. 3 new major contracts this week. 5 acquisition offers, all of which were declining because we don't need them. The board wants to discuss expansion into Europe." "Then let's discuss it," Victoria said, settling behind her desk. The view from her office showed the entire city sprawling below. Somewhere out there, David was probably calling his family, telling them his version of events. She didn't care anymore. Patricia Ross had sent a letter delivered through her lawyer. Of course. Victoria read it once, standing by her window. "Victoria, I always knew you were hiding something. A woman doesn't act that meek unless she's concealing her true nature. You deceived our family, manipulated our son, and destroyed our trust. We want nothing more to do with you." Victoria folded the letter carefully, then fed it through her paper shredder. Some bridges weren't worth maintaining. Some relationships weren't worth salvaging. That evening, she visited the women's shelter where she'd been volunteering for years, the one place she'd told Patricia about, though Patricia had dismissed it as unimportant. The director, Maria, greeted her with a hug. "We saw the article. Everyone here is so proud of you. Thank you." Victoria looked around at the women in the common room. Some were young, some older. All were there because they'd had to escape something: abuse, poverty, circumstances beyond their control. "Ladies," Maria called out, "Victoria's here." The women gathered, their faces showing curiosity and hope. One woman, Jasmine, 26 with a black eye fading to yellow, spoke first. "Is it true, what they're saying about you? That I built a company in secret?" Victoria smiled. "Yes, while your husband thought you were nobody?" "Yes." Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. "How? How did you do it?" Victoria pulled up a chair, sitting among them. "I started with one decision. I would not be helpless. Not ever. Every dollar I could save went into a separate account. Every skill I could learn, I learned. Every connection I could make, I made. I did it quietly, carefully, because I knew if I announced my plans, someone would try to stop me." Another woman, Tanya, 43 with 2 kids, asked, "Were you scared?" "Terrified," Victoria admitted. "Every day. But I was more scared of staying stuck. More scared of looking back at 70 and wondering what I could have been if I'd been brave enough to try." She spent 2 hours there, answering questions, sharing advice. helping them understand that their circumstances, however dire, were not their destiny. As she was leaving, Jasmine caught her arm. "Thank you," she whispered, "for showing us it's possible." Victoria hugged her. "It's more than possible. It's what you deserve." Driving home to her new apartment downtown, no longer the house she'd shared with David, Victoria felt something shift inside her. The past 6 years hadn't been wasted. They'd been preparation. They taught her exactly what she was capable of enduring, building, becoming. She'd forgiven David not because he deserved it, but because carrying anger was exhausting. He was a small man who'd made himself smaller by trying to diminish her. That was punishment enough. She'd forgiven his family for their blindness. They'd see what they wanted to see. They'd learn nothing from this experience. She'd forgiven herself for staying so long, for hiding, for bending, because all of it had led her here to freedom, success, and the knowledge that she was strong enough to build anything she wanted. Her phone buzzed. A message from Amanda, Thomas's wife, who had indeed filed for divorce. "First day of my new life. Thank you for showing me the way out." Victoria smiled and typed back, "Thank you for having the courage to take it." The city lights spread below her apartment window like stars. Victoria stood there for a long moment, thinking about her father, about the lessons he'd taught her, about the empire she'd built from nothing. Tomorrow, she'd wake up early, work out, go to the office, review the European expansion plans, meet with her team, continue building. But tonight she allowed herself this moment of stillness, this moment of pride. She'd played her role so perfectly that everyone believed the performance. Until the moment she chose to step off the stage and reveal she'd been the director all along. 6 months after the divorce, Victoria stood at a podium addressing a conference of young entrepreneurs. The room held 500 people, most of them women, all of them eager for the lessons she'd learned. "Success isn't always loud," she told them. "Sometimes it's quiet preparation. Sometimes it's building when no one's watching. Sometimes it's having the patience to wait for the right moment to reveal what you become." The crowd hung on every word. But here's what I learned most importantly. Your value isn't determined by whether others see it. Your worth isn't negotiated by people who benefit from keeping you small. You get to decide who you are. You get to decide what you're capable of. And you get to decide when to stop hiding your light to make others comfortable in their darkness. Thunderous applause filled the room. After the speech, a young woman approached Victoria. She looked barely 25, nervous but determined. "Ms. Hayes, I'm starting my own company. But my family keeps telling me I should focus on getting married first. On being realistic, on not being too ambitious." Victoria looked at her carefully. "Do you believe in what you're building?" "With everything I have." "Then build it. Quietly, if you must. Loudly, if you can. But build it regardless of what anyone else thinks." Victoria pulled out her card. "Send me your business plan. If it's solid, I'll connect you with investors. Sometimes all we need is one person who believes in us to change everything." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." Victoria watched her walk away, remembering the woman she'd been 6 years ago. Scared, uncertain, but determined to build something that couldn't be taken away. Hayes Analytics was now valued at $300 million. They'd expanded to 12 states and were in negotiations for their first international office. Victoria had been invited to speak at conferences, had been featured in multiple publications, and had become a sought-after advisor for women entrepreneurs. David? She rarely thought about him anymore. The last she'd heard, he'd left his job, moved in with Jessica, and was struggling to adjust to fatherhood. His family had cut him off financially after the divorce revealed the extent of his lies. Patricia sent occasional letters through lawyers, still claiming Victoria had somehow tricked them all. Victoria never responded. Some people would never understand that being underestimated wasn't manipulation. It was simply their failure to look closely at who was standing in front of them. She did, however, maintain her work at the women's shelter. Every Tuesday evening, she sat with women who were rebuilding their lives from nothing. She listened to their stories, shared her own, helped them believe that escape was possible, that starting over was possible, that they were capable of more than anyone had told them. Jasmine had graduated from a coding boot camp. Victoria had sponsored and was now working as a junior developer at a tech startup. Tanya had completed her degree and was teaching at a community college. One by one, the women Victoria mentored were building their own versions of freedom. On the anniversary of her divorce, Rebecca took her to dinner. "Any regrets?" Rebecca asked, raising her wine glass. Victoria considered the question. "I regret not leaving sooner. But I don't regret how it ended. Everything I built myself. No one can take that away." "To freedom," Rebecca toasted. "To freedom," Victoria echoed, walking home that night through streets that used to feel like a cage. Victoria thought about the moral of her own story. It wasn't about revenge, though the divorce had certainly felt like justice. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong, though she'd done plenty of that. It was about this. Never make yourself small for someone else's comfort. Never hide your light to make someone else's dimness feel acceptable. And never, ever apologize for being exactly who you are: strong, capable, brilliant, and free. She'd spent 6 years playing invisible, building in secret, preparing for a moment that might never come. And when it came, she'd been ready. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with documentation, legal structures, financial independence, and a career that spoke for itself. David had slapped her at his family's dinner table, believing she was powerless, believing she had nothing, believing he controlled everything that mattered. She'd purchased in secret and looked at herself in the mirror.